They said the dangerous alien beast had to be sacrificed, but the human gently fed and petted. Commander Arthur Hansen stepped off the transport shuttle onto the landing pad of Elysium Station, the central hub of diplomatic operations on the alien world of Nerithos. The artificial gravity felt slightly heavier than Earth standard, a subtle reminder he was far from home. His combat suit, a marvel of human engineering with its matte-finished titanium alloy plates, adjusted automatically to compensate for the difference. Breathable atmosphere, but don't remove your filtration module, advised the station's AI through his earpiece. Local microbes won't kill you, but they'll give you one hell of a rash. Arthur nodded, scanning the alien architecture around him. Nerithos was renowned across the Galactic Alliance for its advanced biotechnology and strict hierarchical society. The station itself was a strange blend of sleek, metal, and organic-looking structures that seemed to pulse with life. "Commander Hansen?" A melodic voice called from behind him. He turned to face his assigned guide and felt his professional demeanor falter momentarily. The alien woman approaching him moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost hypnotic. Her bright blue skin was adorned with thin, luminescent lines that traced patterns across her visible flesh. Her form-fitting black and navy bodysuit, with its strategic cutouts, resembled something between tactical gear and swimwear. Her silver-white hair was pulled back in an elaborate braid, and her large eyes with glowing white irises regarded him with cool assessment. "I am Liaison Elira Enveri," she said, offering a formal bow instead of a handshake. "I've been assigned to facilitate your inspection of our biological research facilities." Arthur straightened his posture, towering over her by nearly a foot. "Commander Arthur Hansen, Galactic Alliance Security Council. Thank you for meeting me, Liaison Enveri." "You may call me Elira," she replied, her tone remaining professionally distant. "The High Council has granted you access to all facilities except the sacred temples. I trust your visit will be brief and uneventful." The subtle emphasis wasn't lost on Arthur. The Alliance's relationship with Nerithos had been strained ever since rumors began circulating about illegal bioweapon development. His mission, officially an inspection tour, was really about gathering intelligence. "I hope so too," he said with a diplomatic smile. "Shall we begin?" Elira nodded and gestured toward a hovering transport platform. "The primary research complex is located in the northern quadrant. We should arrive before the evening convergence of the moons." As they boarded the transport, Arthur noticed the way other Nerithosians regarded him, with a mixture of curiosity and thinly veiled disdain. Humans were relatively new to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 70 years ago. Many older species still viewed them as upstarts. The transport glided silently through the alien cityscape. Massive structures of living metal and bioluminescent materials towered around them, connected by a web of transparent tubes through which Nerithosians moved like schools of exotic fish. "Your people have accomplished remarkable things," Arthur commented, attempting to break the ice. Elira's expression remained impassive. "We've had 50,000 years to perfect our civilization, Commander. Your species was still discovering fire when we were mapping the stars." "And yet here I am," he replied with a slight grin, "sitting next to you as an equal representative of the Galactic Alliance." Something flickered in her glowing eyes. Perhaps annoyance, perhaps amusement. "Is that what you believe? That we are equals?" Before Arthur could respond, the transport veered sharply, descending toward a massive complex that appeared to be half submerged in an iridescent lake. Unlike the elegant structures of the city, this facility was surrounded by high security barriers and armed guards. "The Aquatic Research Division," Elira explained. "Not originally on your itinerary, but there's been a situation that requires external verification." Arthur raised an eyebrow. "What kind of situation?" "A containment issue," she replied cryptically as the transport landed. "The High Council believes having an Alliance witness might be politically advantageous." As they disembarked, Arthur noticed the heightened security presence. Guards with advanced weaponry stood at attention, their four-fingered hands resting on pulse rifles. Their body language screamed tension. Elira led him through a series of security checkpoints, each more stringent than the last. Finally, they entered a massive chamber with a ceiling that soared at least 50 feet high. The center of the room was dominated by a reinforced containment unit, essentially a high-tech cage, surrounded by nervous-looking scientists and security personnel. Inside the cage was a creature unlike anything Arthur had ever seen. Approximately the size of an earth elephant, it had a serpentine body covered in shimmering blue scales. Two massive yellow-green eyes tracked their movement, and multiple appendages, part fin, part limb, twitched restlessly against the restraints that bound it. "What the hell is that?" Arthur whispered. "A leviathan," Elira replied, keeping a safe distance. "An apex predator from our southern oceans. This specimen was captured for research purposes, but it proved unmanageable." A male Narathosian in elaborate robes approached them, his skin a deeper blue than Elira's. "The Alliance representative, I presume?" he asked, not bothering to address Arthur directly. "Yes, Director Thalos," Elira confirmed. "Commander Hansen is here to observe." Thalos finally turned to Arthur, his expression severe. "You've arrived at an opportune time, human. This beast killed 2 of our handlers yesterday. The High Council has ordered its termination, and having an Alliance witness will prevent any misunderstandings about our research." Arthur studied the creature more carefully. Despite its fearsome appearance, there was something in those alien eyes that struck him as intelligent, perhaps even frightened. "What exactly were you researching?" he asked. Thalos waved a dismissive hand. "Merely biological adaptations to extreme pressure environments. Nothing that violates Alliance treaties." The creature suddenly thrashed against its restraints, causing several Narathosians to back away in alarm. But Arthur noticed something odd. It wasn't trying to attack. Its movement seemed almost desperate. "Has it been fed?" he asked suddenly. Elira and Thalos exchanged glances. "It refused all offered sustenance," Elira explained, "and after it killed the handlers." "When was the last time anyone tried?" Arthur pressed. "Commander," Thalos said sharply, "this is not a pet. It is a dangerous predator that has proven impossible to control or study. The termination will proceed at dawn." Arthur nodded slowly, but his mind was already working. Something wasn't right here. The creature's behavior, the rushed execution, the convenient timing of his visit, it all felt orchestrated. As the director moved away to consult with his staff, Arthur leaned closer to Elira. "I'd like to return here later," he murmured. "Alone." Her glowing eyes widened slightly. "That would be extremely inadvisable, Commander, and unauthorized." Arthur gave her a small smile. "Then I guess you'll have to accompany me, won't you?" For the first time, he saw a crack in her professional facade, a flicker of surprise, and perhaps something else. "You are either very brave or very foolish, human." "I've been called worse," he replied, "by much scarier beings than you." The twin moons of Nerithos cast an ethereal glow through Arthur's quarters as he checked his combat suit systems one final time. The station had entered its nocturnal cycle, with most personnel retired to their living quarters. Perfect timing. He slipped a small package of Earth rations into his utility pouch, including a chocolate protein bar, a luxury item on most alien worlds. Something told him it might come in handy. A soft chime at his door surprised him. He opened it to find Elira standing there, her luminescent skin patterns glowing more intensely in the dim light. "I knew you'd try something foolish," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. She changed from her formal attire into what appeared to be more practical gear, though the form-fitting design still accentuated her athletic figure. Arthur raised an eyebrow. "Come to stop me?" "No," she replied, her glowing eyes meeting his. "I'm coming with you." "Why the change of heart?" Elira hesitated, then spoke in a lower voice. "Something isn't right about this situation. The Leviathans are rare, protected creatures. The research authorization was irregular." "You're risking a lot," Arthur noted, studying her with newfound interest. "As are you, Commander." A hint of a smile played at the corners of her mouth. "But humans have a reputation for recklessness that serves them well. Perhaps I'm curious to see it firsthand." The comment sent an unexpected charge through him. "Call me Arthur," he said. "If we're going to commit treason together, we might as well be on a first-name basis." Her smile widened slightly. "Very well, Arthur." The way his name rolled off her tongue with that musical alien accent did something to his pulse rate that his combat suit immediately registered, adjusting his temperature regulation accordingly. They moved through the station's service corridors, avoiding the main thoroughfares. Elira's knowledge of the security systems proved invaluable, allowing them to bypass several checkpoints without triggering alarms. "You've done this before," Arthur observed as she expertly disabled a security scanner. "I've had doubts about certain research protocols for some time," she admitted, "but never acted on them until now." "What changed?" She glanced at him, her luminescent patterns pulsing slightly faster. "You did. Your willingness to question what you're told. It's refreshing." They reached the research facility without incident. Using Elira's access codes, they entered through a maintenance hatch and made their way to the containment chamber. The massive room was dimly lit, with only emergency lighting casting long shadows across the floor. The Leviathan was still there, its shimmering scales reflecting the minimal light. It seemed subdued, perhaps resigned to its fate. As they approached, its massive eyes tracked them, focusing particularly on Arthur. "The guards will return for a check in approximately 20 minutes, Elira whispered. "Whatever you're planning, do it quickly." Arthur approached the cage slowly, maintaining eye contact with the creature. It watched him warily but made no aggressive movements. "Hey there, big guy," he said softly, reaching into his pouch for the chocolate bar. "Hungry?" The Leviathan's nostrils flared, sensing the unfamiliar food. Arthur unwrapped the bar and with a deep breath, extended his hand through the bars. Elira tensed behind him. "Arthur, that's extremely dangerous." The creature lunged forward, but instead of attacking, it delicately took the offering with what appeared to be a specialized feeding appendage. It consumed the chocolate in one swift motion, then made a low, rumbling sound that vibrated through the floor. "I think he likes it," Arthur grinned, reaching his hand further to touch the creature's head. "Impossible," Elira breathed, moving closer, despite her obvious apprehension. "Leviathans are apex predators. They don't bond with other species." The creature leaned into Arthur's touch, its massive eyes half closing in what appeared to be pleasure. The scales were smooth and warm under his fingers, pulsing with an internal energy that reminded him of Elira's bioluminescent patterns. "I don't think he killed those handlers," Arthur said quietly. "Look at him. He's responsive, intelligent. This isn't mindless aggression." Elira cautiously moved beside him, her shoulder brushing against his arm. The contact sent a surprising jolt of awareness through him. "The official report said they were devoured," she murmured, her voice closer to his ear than necessary. "But I never saw the bodies. It was all very controlled." Arthur turned to face her, suddenly aware of their proximity. Her glowing eyes were wide, her silver-white hair catching the blue light from her skin patterns. The air between them seemed to charge with something beyond the danger of their situation. "We need to get him out of here," Arthur said, his voice rougher than intended. "That would be treason against the High Council," Elira replied, but her tone lacked conviction. Her gaze dropped briefly to his lips before returning to his eyes. "Not to mention dangerous and completely irrational." "Welcome to humanity," he said with a half-smile. "Dangerous and irrational is our specialty." Her luminescent patterns pulsed more rapidly, and Arthur realized it might be the alien equivalent of a blush. "I'm beginning to see the appeal," she admitted. The Leviathan made another rumbling sound, breaking the moment. Arthur turned back to the creature, assessing the restraints and cage mechanism. "Can your access codes release these locks?" he asked. Elira hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, but Arthur, once we do this, there's no going back. For either of us." He met her gaze steadily. "Some things are worth the risk." Their eyes held for a long moment, an unspoken understanding passing between them. Then Elira moved to the control panel, her fingers dancing across the alien interface. "Ready?" she asked, her finger hovering over the final command. Arthur nodded, placing his hand on the creature's head one more time. "Let's make some history." The final lock disengaged with a resonant clank that seemed to echo through the entire facility. The massive containment field flickered and died, leaving nothing between them and the Leviathan but air. Arthur held his breath as the creature rose to its full height, stretching appendages that had been restrained for who knew how long. It was even more magnificent, free, easily 20 feet of sinuous, powerful body covered in those remarkable scales that shifted between azure and teal with each movement. "By the ancestral seas," Elira whispered, instinctively moving closer to Arthur. The Leviathan regarded them both with those intelligent yellow-green eyes, then lowered its head in what appeared to be a gesture of gratitude. A low, harmonious rumble emanated from its chest. The moment of wonder was shattered by the harsh blare of an alarm. "Security breach in Containment Sector 4, announced an automated voice. "All personnel report to stations." "Someone's coming," Arthur said, checking the door. "We need to move, now." As if understanding the urgency, the Leviathan moved toward them, lowering its body in a clear invitation. "I think he wants us to ride him," Arthur said, already moving to climb onto the creature's back. Illyra hesitated. "This is madness." "Welcome to humanity's favorite pastime," he replied, extending his hand to her. "Trust me." Their fingers interlocked, and he pulled her up behind him onto the creature's back, her arms wrapped around his waist, her body pressed against his. Even through his combat suit, he could feel the warmth of her, the subtle vibration of her bioluminescent patterns against his back. The main doors to the containment area slid open, revealing Director Thalos flanked by 6 armed security officers. "Stop them!" Thalos shouted, his face contorted with rage. "The specimen cannot leave this facility." The Leviathan let out a deafening roar that shook the very walls, then surged forward with unexpected speed. The security officers scattered, firing wildly, but the creature moved with astonishing agility, weaving between obstacles. "Hold on tight," Arthur called as the Leviathan smashed through a transparent wall, sending fragments flying in all directions. His combat suit's shields activated automatically, protecting both of them from the debris. They burst into a massive atrium that connected to the exterior of the facility. Overhead, the twin moons of Nerithos shone through a transparent dome, illuminating their escape path. "The maintenance docks are to the right," Illyra shouted over the alarms. "There's an exit to the lake." Arthur leaned forward, somehow knowing the Leviathan would understand. The creature banked right, its powerful body flowing like water through the corridors. Behind them, the shouts of security forces and the whine of energy weapons grew more distant. They reached the maintenance bay, a cavernous space where various aquatic vessels were docked. At the far end, a massive doorway led directly to the iridescent lake that surrounded the facility. "My shuttle is docked on the other side of the lake," Arthur said as the Leviathan paused, seemingly awaiting direction. "If we can reach it..." The doors behind them exploded inward. Director Thalos entered, now inside a mechanized combat exoskeleton that amplified his height and strength. Behind him poured more security forces. "Traitors!" Thalos bellowed, the exoskeleton amplifying his voice to painful levels. "The human has corrupted you, Illyra. The High Council will have both your heads." "The exit," Arthur urged, but the Leviathan had already turned to face the threat, positioning itself protectively in front of them. To Arthur's astonishment, the creature's scales began to glow with increasing intensity, building to a brilliant blue-white radiance that forced him to shield his eyes. The Leviathan opened its massive jaws and released not a roar, but a focused beam of energy that struck Thalos's exoskeleton dead center. The director was thrown backward, his mech smoking and sparking. The security forces scattered in panic. "It's a guardian!" Illyra gasped, her arms tightening around Arthur. The ancient texts spoke of them, protectors of Nerithos' oceans. "I thought they were myths." The Leviathan turned back to them, its energy display dimming. Without further prompting, it surged toward the lake access, smashing through the remaining barriers and plunging into the iridescent waters, with Arthur and Illyra still clinging to its back. The cold shock of the alien water hit Arthur like a physical blow, but his suit compensated quickly, forming a thin protective layer over his exposed skin. Illyra seemed perfectly at home in the aquatic environment, her gill-like structures behind her ears fluttering open. The Leviathan moved through the water with incredible speed, carrying them across the lake toward where Arthur's shuttle waited. Behind them, alarm lights flashed across the research facility, and in the distance, the whine of engines signaled pursuit craft being launched. They reached the small docking platform where his shuttle was secured. The Leviathan surfaced gently, allowing them to dismount onto the platform. "Thank you," Arthur said, placing his hand on the creature's head one last time. The Leviathan made that rumbling sound again, then backed away slightly, watching them with those intelligent eyes. "He's staying to protect our escape," Illyra translated, her wet silver-white hair clinging to her blue skin in a way that made Arthur's pulse quicken despite their danger. They raced to the shuttle, Arthur's authorization codes quickly overriding the local security lockdown. As the entry ramp descended, Illyra paused, looking back at the Leviathan and the only home she had ever known. "Are you sure about this?" Arthur asked softly. "You can still go back. Claim I forced you." She turned to him, her luminescent patterns pulsing rapidly. "I've never been more certain of anything." Inside the shuttle, Arthur took the pilot's seat, his fingers flying over the controls. Illyra settled beside him, her wet bodysuit leaving little to the imagination. The confined space of the cockpit suddenly felt very intimate. "Nerathosian warships are launching from the capital," she reported, scanning the tactical display. "We have perhaps 5 minutes before they're in range." Arthur engaged the engines, the shuttle rising smoothly from the platform. Through the viewport, they could see the Leviathan still watching them, its massive form silhouetted against the iridescent waters. "Hold on," Arthur said, punching the throttle. The shuttle shot upward, breaking through Nerethos's cloud layer and into the star-filled blackness of space. As the planet fell away beneath them, Illyra's hand found his on the control panel. Her touch sent a current of awareness through him that had nothing to do with danger and everything to do with the way her eyes caught the starlight. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice soft with possibilities. Arthur smiled, setting course for the system's edge. "Now, we make our own rules." The shuttle's warning systems blared to life just as they cleared Nerethos's outermost moon. "Fuel cell integrity compromised," announced the ship's AI in its maddeningly calm voice. "Recommend immediate power conservation protocols." Arthur swore under his breath, fingers dancing across the control panel. The diagnostics confirmed his fears. During their hasty escape, debris had damaged 2 of the 4 main fuel cells. "How bad?" Illyra asked, leaning over his shoulder, her damp silver hair brushing against his cheek. "Bad enough," he replied, initiating emergency protocols. "We've got maybe 6 hours of life support at full power. If we conserve, we might stretch it to 18 inches. The shuttle's lights dimmed as non-essential systems powered down. Outside the viewport, the vast emptiness of space stretched before them, punctuated by distant stars and the fading blue orb of Nerethos. "The Nerathosian fleet?" Arthur asked, glancing at the tactical display. Illyra checked the readings. "They've broken off pursuit. We're outside their territorial boundary now." She paused. "But they'll have alerted border patrols. They won't let us go easily." Arthur leaned back in the pilot's seat, running a hand through his short hair. "We need to make repairs before attempting a jump to the nearest Alliance outpost." "Can we?" Illyra asked, her luminescent patterns pulsing with concern. "I've got repair nanites, but they need time to work. We'll have to drift and conserve power." He turned to face her fully for the first time since they'd boarded. "I hope you don't mind close quarters?" The shuttle's cabin was indeed compact, designed for utility rather than comfort. With life support systems minimized, the temperature was already dropping noticeably. "My people are quite comfortable with proximity," she replied, a hint of something playful in her tone. Her glowing white eyes held his gaze longer than strictly necessary. Arthur initiated the repair sequence, watching as the nanites began their slow work on the damaged fuel cells. The shuttle's systems calculated completion time, 14 hours. "We should get out of these wet clothes," Arthur said, then caught himself at Illyra's raised eyebrow. "For practical reasons. Hypothermia isn't part of my escape plan." "Of course," she replied, her lips curving into a smile. "Purely practical." The shuttle had a small storage compartment with emergency supplies, including thermal blankets and basic clothing. Arthur handed Illyra a set of standard-issue Alliance garments, designed to be one-size-fits-most, and turned to give her privacy. "Your human modesty is charming," she commented as fabric rustled behind him. "Nerathosians view the body as simply another form of expression. Covering and uncovering are matters of function, not shame." "It's not shame," Arthur replied, keeping his back turned. "It's respect." "Even more charming," she said, her voice closer now. "I'm decent by your standards." He turned to find her wrapped in the thermal blanket, her wet bodysuit draped over a nearby console to dry. The Alliance garments hung loosely on her slender frame, the neckline slipping to reveal the delicate luminescent patterns that traced along her collarbone. "Your turn," she said, pointedly turning her back to him. Arthur quickly stripped off his combat suit, grateful for its quick-release functions, and changed into dry clothes. The cabin felt smaller somehow, more intimate with both of them in soft fabrics, rather than their respective armor. "All clear," he said. Illyra turned, and something in her expression made his pulse quicken. Without the formality of their official roles or the immediate danger of pursuit, a new awareness hung between them in the dimly lit cabin. "So," she said, settling into the co-pilot's seat and drawing her knees up to her chest, 14 hours to kill. Tell me about Earth." Arthur smiled, leaning against the control panel. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Your world is something of a mystery to us. Humans appeared on the galactic stage so suddenly, one moment absent, the next everywhere." "We're an impatient species," Arthur admitted. "Once we figured out faster-than-light travel, we couldn't wait to see what was out there. Your people have a reputation for being," she searched for the word, "unpredictable, dangerous even. Is that what they teach about us on Nerathos?" Illyra's luminescent patterns pulsed softly. "They teach that humans act on instinct rather than logic, that you're guided by emotion instead of reason." She paused. "After watching you with the Leviathan, I'm inclined to agree, but not in the way they meant it." The conversation flowed easily after that. Arthur told her about Earth's oceans and forests, its crowded cities and quiet wilderness. Illyra shared stories of Nerathos' ancient history, the rise of their technological civilization, and the myths of the guardian Leviathans. Hours passed unnoticed. They shared his ration packs, Illyra making faces at the bland human food, but eating it anyway. The temperature continued to drop as the shuttle conserved power, forcing them to sit closer, sharing thermal blankets. "Your skin," Arthur said during a lull in conversation, watching the patterns of light that pulsed beneath her blue surface. "The luminescence. What does it mean?" Illyra looked down at her arm where the patterns were flowing in gentle waves. "It's both involuntary and controlled. Like your facial expressions, I suppose. It reflects emotional states, but we can also use it to communicate." "And right now," he asked softly, "what is it saying?" She met his eyes, the patterns brightening. "That I'm intrigued, curious." A pause. "Attracted." The word hung between them, honest and unadorned. "On Earth," Arthur said, his voice lower than before, "we'd probably dance around that admission for days." "Is that what you'd prefer?" she asked, moving imperceptibly closer. "No," he admitted. "I've never been good at dancing." Her laugh was musical, her luminescent patterns flaring briefly with delight. Another charming human contradiction. Warriors with gentle hearts. The moment might have led somewhere else, but a sudden alert from the communications array interrupted them. A distress signal, faint but unmistakable. Arthur reluctantly pulled away, checking the source. "It's coming from a Nerathosian vessel about 2 hours from our position." Illyra frowned, leaning forward to examine the signal pattern. "That's not a standard distress call." Her eyes widened. "It's a guardian frequency, the same harmonic pattern the Leviathan used in the facility." They exchanged a look of understanding. "Another guardian," Arthur said, "being transported." "Or experimented on," Illyra added grimly. The choice hung before them. Continue drifting, conserve power, and ensure their own safety, or risk everything to investigate. "If we divert power to engines, we'll delay the repairs," Arthur warned. "And if it's a trap?" Illyra's hand found his, her fingers intertwining with his own. The sensation of her cool skin against his sent a pleasant shiver up his arm. "What would a human do?" she asked, though her knowing smile suggested she already had the answer. Arthur grinned, already plotting the course adjustment. Something dangerous and completely irrational. The massive Nerathosian prison transport loomed before them, its dark hull illuminated by sporadic bursts of weapons fire. As they approached, Arthur could see smaller ships, sleek, predatory vessels with mismatched hull plating, swarming around the transport like parasites. "Pirates," he muttered, adjusting their approach vector to minimize detection. "Looks like someone else had the same idea about the value of a guardian." Illyra's luminescent patterns dimmed with concern as she studied the tactical display. "The transport's defenses are failing. Those aren't ordinary pirates. They're using military-grade weapons." Arthur guided their shuttle into the shadow of the transport's massive engine array, using the radiation signature to mask their presence. From this position, they could observe without being immediately detected. The Guardian's signal is coming from the central containment section, Illyra reported, her fingers dancing across the sensor controls. But there's something else. Her voice trailed off, her patterns pulsing with surprise. What is it? Arthur asked, moving closer to see the display. Their shoulders touched, sending a now familiar current of awareness between them. Human life signs, she said, looking up at him with those luminous eyes. One human aboard the transport. Arthur frowned. Alliance personnel? Impossible to tell from here, but they're in the command section, not being held as a prisoner. The implications hung between them. A human working with the Narathosians? Or perhaps captured and forced to cooperate? We need to know what we're walking into, Arthur decided. I'm going to try to access their communications. He activated the shuttle's passive communication array, scanning through Narathosian frequencies until he found an active channel. The translator software kicked in, converting the alien language to standard. Demand immediate surrender of the specimen. A harsh voice crackled through the speakers. Your shields are failing. You cannot escape. This vessel is under the protection of the Narathosian High Council, replied a calmer voice. Any aggression will be considered an act of war. Your High Council doesn't know you're here, Captain Renox, the pirate leader sneered. Our intelligence is quite thorough. This is an unauthorized transport of a highly valuable biological asset. No one will come looking for you. Arthur and Illyra exchanged glances. Unauthorized, she whispered. That means someone in the Narathosian government is running their own operation, Arthur finished, and these pirates somehow found out. A new voice joined the communication. Human, male, with the clipped tones of someone used to giving orders. This is Commander Vance. I represent interests that would pay us substantially more than whatever you've been offered for the Guardian. Perhaps we can negotiate. Arthur stiffened, recognition flashing across his face. You know him, Illyra said. It wasn't a question. Thomas Vance, Arthur confirmed grimly. Former Alliance Special Operations. He went mercenary 3 years ago, selling his services to the highest bidder. He shook his head. I never thought he'd sink this low. The pirate leader laughed. Negotiate? Your vessel is crippled, Commander. We'll take what we want. The communication cut off as another barrage of weapons fire struck the transport. The massive ship's shields flickered visibly, sections failing completely. We need to move fast, Arthur said, already reaching for his combat suit. Those pirates breach the hull. They'll kill everyone aboard and take the Guardian. Illyra caught his arm, her cool fingers wrapping around his wrist. And what's our plan? We're 2 people in a damaged shuttle against pirates and rogue Narathosians. Arthur smiled, that confident human smile that had first intrigued her. We have something they don't. And what's that? The moral high ground, he said with a wink. Plus, I'm pretty good at improvising. Despite the danger, Illyra felt a surge of warmth at his unflagging confidence. Her luminescent patterns brightened, pulsing in a rhythm that, in her culture, signified deep affection. Before we go, she said softly, there's something you should know about Narathosian customs. What's that? He asked, pausing in his preparations. When we face potential death, it's traditional to leave nothing unsaid or undone. She moved closer, the soft glow of her patterns illuminating the small space between them. No regrets to carry into the void. Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by a heat that had nothing to do with the shuttle's environmental controls. He reached out, his fingers tracing the luminescent patterns along her cheek with gentle fascination. No regrets, he agreed, his voice husky. What followed was a discovery of differences and similarities. The cool silk of her blue skin against his warmth, the way her luminescent patterns flared and danced with each touch, the surprising compatibility of their forms despite evolving on worlds light years apart. Her silver-white hair tangled around his fingers as they moved together in the shuttle's confined space, finding a rhythm as natural as the stars wheeling outside their viewport. Afterward, they lay entwined beneath the thermal blanket, her head resting on his chest as he traced the now brilliant patterns along her shoulder. Your heart beats so quickly, she murmured, her fingers splayed over his chest. Even at rest. Human normal, he assured her, though you might be responsible for a few extra beats per minute. She laughed softly, the sound like chimes in the quiet cabin. I've studied human physiology, but experiencing it is something else entirely. A proximity alert from the shuttle systems interrupted the moment. The pirate vessels were moving into position for a final assault on the transport's weakened shields. "Time to be heroes," Arthur said, reluctantly disentangling himself and reaching again for his combat suit. Alira watched him, her expression thoughtful. "You know, in Narathosian culture, what we just shared would create a bond recognized by law. We would be considered life partners." Arthur paused, looking back at her with surprise. "That's quite a commitment for a first date." "Is that not how humans do it?" and she asked, her tone innocent but her eyes dancing with mischief. "Not typically," he admitted with a grin, "but I've never been one for typical." They dressed quickly, preparing for the dangerous mission ahead. Arthur checked his weapons while Alira accessed the transport's schematics through the shuttle's database. "The Guardian is being held here," she said, highlighting a section of the massive ship. "The command center is 2 decks above. If we can dock at this maintenance airlock, we might be able to slip aboard unnoticed during the pirate attack." Arthur nodded, already plotting their approach. "I'll deal with Vance. You focus on finding the Guardian. And then we improvise," he said with a confidence that made her luminescent patterns pulse with anticipation. "That's what humans do best." The maintenance airlock cycled open with a hiss, admitting Arthur and Alira into the dimly lit corridor of the Narathosian transport. Emergency lighting cast eerie blue shadows across the walls as the ship's systems diverted power to shields and weapons. Distant sounds of combat echoed through the metal passageways. The pirates had already breached the hull in multiple locations. "Life support is failing in sections B through D," Alira reported, checking a wall terminal. "The pirates are pushing toward the command center." Arthur nodded, activating his combat suit's tactical systems. "And the Guardian?" "2 decks down. Central containment. Still secure, but that won't last if the pirates take control of the ship." They moved swiftly through the corridors, encountering the first signs of battle. Scorch marks from energy weapons, abandoned equipment, and finally bodies. Narathosian security personnel lay where they had fallen, defending their posts against the pirate incursion. "These weren't clean kills," Arthur observed grimly, kneeling beside one of the fallen. "The pirates are using disruptor weapons, banned in civilized space." Alira's luminescent patterns dimmed with anger and sorrow. "They're not here for prisoners." A sudden explosion rocked the ship, sending them both staggering against the bulkhead. Arthur instinctively pulled Alira close, shielding her with his armored body as debris rained down from the ceiling. For a moment they stood pressed together, her cool form fitting perfectly against him, a brief reminder of their earlier intimacy. "We should split up," Arthur said reluctantly as the shaking subsided. "I'll head to the command center to deal with Vance. You find the Guardian." Alira's hand caught his, her luminescent patterns pulsing with concern. "Be careful. Vance was one of yours. He'll know how you think." "And I know how he thinks," Arthur replied with a confident smile. He squeezed her hand once before releasing it. "Meet me at containment level. And Alira?" He hesitated, then leaned in to press his lips briefly to hers. "That's a human promise. I'll be there." They parted at the next junction, Alira heading downward toward containment, while Arthur made his way up toward the command center. The sounds of fighting grew louder as he approached. Energy weapons discharging, shouted orders in alien tongues, the distinctive thud of breaching charges. Arthur paused at a security station, accessing the ship's internal sensors. The command center was under siege, pirates attempting to cut through the reinforced doors, while the remaining Narathosian officers made their last stand inside. And there, in the center of the command platform, stood Thomas Vance. His posture relaxed despite the chaos, as if he were merely observing an interesting experiment. Circumventing the main assault, Arthur used his combat suit's enhanced strength to force open a maintenance shaft that led directly into the command center's secondary systems room. From there, it was a simple matter to override the security protocols and slip inside unnoticed. The command center was a scene of tense standoff. Captain Rennox and 3 Narathosian officers held weapons trained on the main doors, which glowed red-hot as the pirates cut through from the outside. Vance stood at the central console, calmly downloading data while the ship burned around him. "Hello, Thomas," Arthur said, stepping from the shadows with his pulse rifle leveled at his former colleague. Vance turned, surprise flickering across his face before being replaced by a sardonic smile. "Arthur Hansen, I might have known the Alliance would send you." He glanced at the Narathosian captain. Though I see you've gone off script. Fraternizing with the locals. What are you doing here, Thomas? Arthur demanded, ignoring the jibe. Selling out to the highest bidder now? Selling out, Vance laughed. I'm completing the mission, Arthur. The real mission. Captain Renox hissed, his blue skin darkening with anger. Silence, human. Oh, I think it's time for some honesty, Vance replied. Your friend Hansen here was never sent to inspect facilities. He was sent to gather intelligence on the Guardian program. The same program you're running behind your own government's back. Arthur kept his weapon steady, but doubt crept into his mind. What are you talking about? Alliance intelligence has known about the Guardians for months, Vance explained. These creatures aren't just animals. They're living weapons, capable of channeling and directing energy on a scale that would make our most advanced systems look like toys. He gestured to the data downloading on the console. I was sent to secure the research, by any means necessary. You're working for Alliance intelligence? Arthur asked incredulously. Deep cover, Vance confirmed, though my methods have become flexible over time. The main doors began to give way, the metal warping inward as the pirates' cutting tools completed their work. We don't have time for this, Captain Renox snapped. The specimen must be secured. Specimen? Arthur echoed. You mean the Guardian you're transporting? A new alarm blared through the command center, a containment breach alert from the lower decks. It appears your blue girlfriend has found what she was looking for, Vance observed dryly. Arthur's communicator crackled to life. Arthur! Illyra's voice was urgent. You need to get down here. The Guardian. It's not alone. There are eggs, dozens of them. Understanding dawned on Arthur. That's what this is really about. Not just one Guardian, but a breeding population. Vance nodded. Whoever controls the Guardians controls the future of weapons technology in this sector. The Alliance wants them. The Narathosian High Council wants them. And now these pirates want them too. The doors finally gave way with a screech of tortured metal. Pirates poured into the command center, weapons blazing. Captain Renox and his officers returned fire, creating a chaotic crossfire that forced both Arthur and Vance to take cover behind the central console. Looks like we're on the same side for now, Vance remarked, drawing his own weapon and firing at the pirates. I'm not on anyone's side except the Guardians, Arthur replied, joining the fight with precise shots that dropped two pirates in quick succession. These creatures aren't weapons. They're intelligent beings. I've seen it firsthand. Noble as always, Vance said with a shake of his head. But the galaxy isn't as simple as you want it to be, Arthur. Sometimes you have to make hard choices. Another explosion rocked the ship, more violent than the last. The deck plates buckled beneath them. The pirates have hit the main reactor, Captain Renox shouted over the alarms. We have minutes before catastrophic failure. Arthur made his decision. Illyra, status report. I've released the Guardian, her voice came back, strained but determined. It's protecting the eggs, but we're cut off from the escape pods by pirates. Head for docking bay 3, Arthur instructed. Our shuttle is still attached to the maintenance airlock nearby. He turned to Vance. What's it going to be, Thomas? Die here for your mission or help me save innocent lives? Vance hesitated, conflict evident in his eyes. Then with a resigned sigh, he ejected the data core from the console and tucked it into his pocket. Lead the way, hero, he said. But this conversation isn't over. The journey to the containment level was a gauntlet of chaos. Arthur and Vance fought their way through corridors filled with smoke and sporadic firefights between pirates and the remaining Narathosian security forces. Captain Renox and his surviving officers followed, their earlier hostility replaced by the pragmatism of survival. 2 minutes to reactor breach, the ship's AI announced with maddening calm as they descended to the lower decks. Your girlfriend better have that Guardian under control, Vance muttered, dispatching a pirate with a precise shot. Those creatures aren't known for their cooperation. You'd be surprised what a little kindness can accomplish, Arthur replied, leading the way through the labyrinthine corridors. They reached the containment level to find the massive doors blown outward, twisted metal scattered across the antechamber. Inside, the scene was unlike anything Arthur had expected. Illyra stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by a semicircle of pirates kept at bay by the massive Guardian Leviathan. The creature's scales pulsed with that same blue-white energy Arthur had witnessed before, but instead of attacking, it maintained a protective position around a cluster of large, iridescent eggs nestled in a makeshift pool. "Arthur," Elira called, her luminescent patterns brightening at the sight of him. "The pirates are after the eggs." The pirate leader, a hulking reptilian alien with scarred scales and cybernetic enhancements, turned at their entrance. "More company," he snarled. "Kill them all. The eggs are all that matter." "Not today," Arthur replied, stepping forward with his weapon raised. "Those eggs aren't property. They're the future of a sentient species." The Guardian roared, the sound reverberating through the chamber with such force that several pirates staggered back. Its intelligent eyes fixed on Arthur with unmistakable recognition. Not of him personally, but of something in him that it understood. "It senses your intent," Elira explained, moving to his side. "Just like the first Guardian did." The pirate leader laughed harshly. "Sentient? They're weapons, living batteries to power the next generation of warships, worth billions on the black market." "That's where you're wrong," Arthur said, lowering his weapon slightly. "They're not weapons. They're guardians, protectors. That's why they respond to kindness, not force." To demonstrate, he slowly approached the massive creature, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. The Guardian watched him warily but didn't attack. Arthur reached into his pocket and withdrew his last chocolate protein bar, the same peace offering that had worked before. "Is he insane?" Captain Renox hissed from the doorway. "No," Vance replied, watching with growing fascination. "He's human." The Guardian's nostrils flared, catching the scent of the offering. With surprising delicacy for such a massive creature, it extended a specialized feeding appendage and accepted the chocolate. A low, harmonious rumble emanated from its chest, a sound of pleasure, perhaps even gratitude. "See?" Arthur said, gently placing his hand on the creature's head. "Not everything has to be taken by force." The moment was shattered by a new alarm, more urgent than before. "Reactor containment failing. Detonation imminent. All personnel evacuate immediately." "We need to move," Vance urged. "Now!" The pirate leader snarled, raising his weapon. "No one takes my prize." Before he could fire, Vance stepped forward and shot him cleanly through the chest. The remaining pirates, seeing their leader fall and facing the combined forces of two humans, a Guardian, and the Narathosian officers, quickly surrendered. "The eggs," Elira said urgently. "We can't leave them." "My shuttle can't transport all of them," Arthur replied, looking at the clutch of at least 20 large eggs. Captain Renox stepped forward, his earlier hostility replaced by something like respect. "The transport has escape pods designed for biological specimens, large enough for the Guardian and its offspring." "And why would you help?" Arthur asked skeptically. The Narathosian captain's expression was solemn. "Because you've shown me there's another way. My people have always feared what we didn't understand, tried to control it. Perhaps it's time we learned from humanity's example." With the countdown to destruction ticking away, they worked quickly to load the eggs into the specialized escape pod. The Guardian, seeming to understand their intentions, helped move its precious offspring, cradling each egg with surprising tenderness for such a fearsome creature. 30 seconds to detonation," announced the AI. "Everyone in," Arthur ordered as the last egg was secured. The Guardian entered the pod, curling protectively around its clutch. There was a moment of confusion as they realized the pod's control system required someone to remain behind to launch it manually. "I'll do it," Vance said unexpectedly. "The rest of you go with the Guardian." "Thomas," Arthur began. "There's another pod adjacent to the launch controls," Vance cut him off. "I'll be right behind you." He pressed the data core into Arthur's hand. "Make sure this gets to the right people. People who'll understand what it really means." Arthur nodded, clasping his former colleague's shoulder. "See you on the other side." As the pod door sealed, the last thing Arthur saw was Vance's sardonic salute before he turned to the launch controls. Their pod ejected with a violent jolt, shooting away from the doomed transport just as the reactor went critical. The explosion illuminated space behind them, the shock wave pushing them further into the safety of open space. "Vance?" Elira asked softly, her hand finding Arthur's in the dim emergency lighting of the pod. A second pod appeared on their tracking system, safely clear of the explosion. Arthur smiled. "Told you. Humans are stubborn. 3 months later, the Guardian Sanctuary sprawled across a previously uninhabited moon in neutral space, its facilities designed to mimic the oceanic environment of Neurithos, while providing the freedom the creatures deserved. From the observation deck, Arthur watched as the adult Guardians taught their recently hatched offspring to channel their unique energy abilities. "Magnificent, aren't they?" Elira said, joining him at the viewport. Her formal liaison uniform had been replaced by the more practical attire of a xenobiologist, though she still managed to make it look elegant. The luminescent patterns on her blue skin pulsed with contentment as she leaned against him. "Worth every fight," Arthur agreed, slipping an arm around her waist. "The Alliance Security Council finally signed off on the protection treaty this morning. The Guardians are officially recognized as a sentient species with full rights." "And the Neurithosian High Council?" Captain Renux's testimony was persuasive. "They've agreed to share their historical records on the Guardians and contribute to the Sanctuary's funding." "And Director Thalos?" Arthur grinned. "Enjoying early retirement in a very comfortable detention facility." The door to the observation deck slid open, admitting Vance. The former mercenary had traded his tactical gear for the uniform of Alliance Diplomatic Corps, a change that still amused Arthur. "The Galactic Press is here for the official opening ceremony," Vance announced. "They're particularly interested in interviewing the human who tamed the beast with chocolate." Arthur groaned. "I told you that headline was a mistake." "It sells the story," Vance shrugged. "Humanity, the species that makes friends instead of weapons. Very inspirational." "Speaking of which," Elira interjected, "the first clutch of eggs is showing remarkable development. Their energy signatures are stabilizing weeks ahead of schedule." "Any more insights from the data core?" Arthur asked Vance. "Only that we were right. The Guardians aren't weapons, they're regulators. Their energy manipulation evolved to maintain Neurithos' oceanic ecosystem. They don't create energy, they balance it." Vance shook his head. "We were so focused on weaponizing them that we missed their true value." "Environmental restoration," Elira finished. "Planets damaged by industrial pollution or warfare could be healed with their help, if they choose to help us." "And that's the key difference," Arthur said, watching a young Guardian playfully chase its sibling through the artificial reef. "Choice, respect, partnership instead of exploitation." Vance checked his timepiece. 2 minutes until the ceremony. You ready to be the face of human-alien cooperation?" Arthur looked at Elira, her luminescent patterns pulsing in that, now familiar rhythm that signified her affection. In the 3 months since their escape, their bond had only deepened, bridging the gap between their different worlds and biologies with something as simple and complex as love. "As ready as I'll ever be," he replied. As they walked toward the ceremony, Elira's fingers entwined with his. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "in Neurithosian tradition, the savior of an endangered species is granted a special title, Valtor. It means the gentle hand." "Fitting," Vance remarked with a smirk, "the man who pet the beast everyone else wanted to kill." Arthur laughed, but there was truth in it. Sometimes the greatest strength wasn't in domination or control, but in the courage to show kindness when everyone else chose fear. It was a lesson humanity had learned through its own difficult history, one they could now share with the stars. As they entered the grand hall filled with representatives from dozens of worlds, all eyes turned to the human who had changed the course of interstellar relations with nothing more than a chocolate bar and the audacity to be gentle. Arthur stepped forward, ready to tell their story.